Welcome to PowerUp podcast, the podcast that seeks to empower and dismantle, giving us the power and confidence to question, deconstruct, rebuild, and expand in life. I'm your host, AmaRouge, voiceover and multidisciplinary artist, well-being advocate, food and book geek with over 14 years of movement-centered experience.
I am your host, Mesma, artist, choreographer, yogi and coach with a passion for alchemy, creativity, transformation and workplace wellness.
We recognise that we can't dismantle and empower or be empowered without first learning ourselves, diving deeper to unlearn the harmful, restrictive and unprogressive. It's an ongoing practice and journey for us all, which is why we created this podcast.
Our show features guests doing the work to enlighten, deconstruct and power up in their own magical ways.
We're going to be having conversations around the power of healing, transformation, well-being and creativity, and how they feed our personal and collective evolution, how they help us power up. We are back! That's me and Mesma with two beautiful humans, Kristel, Tracey and Karla Jane Thomas. And we are super excited to be chatting with them because, to be honest, if you could see what I could see on my screen, it's just 4 squares of deliciousness. And they have so much to say. And so do we. And we're so happy that you're joining us for this. Everyone's making hearts at the screen. Hi!
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 Hello!
Welcome, beauties.
Karla's pronouns are she, her. Karla is a performance program director for an arts organisation called Artolution. A British-born Jamaican Sambista with a love for teaching and working with disenfranchised youth in between mothering 2 children and trying to do voiceover gigs in New York where she now lives. Karla has just done a performance project with asylum-seeking youth, mostly from Central and South America in Queens, New York. She takes their lived stories and creates a show around it using different performative mediums.
Welcome, Bubble. Kristel is a communications and engagement specialist by day. She moonlights as a writer. Her pronouns are she, her. And currently she's told us that the creative stuff has taken a bit of a backseat since she's become a parent, but she has got some exciting stuff in the extended pipeline and a book will be written.
It will.
And I myself, I'm super excited about that, Kristel. I'm a little bit of a, I was going to say something I probably can't say on the podcast, but I'm like all over your writing.
I haven't even written the title page, to be honest, but it will happen.
It will happen. I cannot wait. You've got orders already in.
Thanks, guys. I'm speaking it into existence. So yeah.
Yes, manifest it.
Yes.
Kristel's actually going to share a little bit of her writing with us now. And we felt that this particular article was a really appropriate intro to what we're talking about today. So, Kristel, if you would please share your magic with us.
Yes, my pleasure. So this comes from an article I wrote a few years back for a platform called Media Diversified. And the article was called We Need to Talk About Light-Skinned Privilege. So please excuse me, but I'm going to try an awful Southern American accent for this intro and it will make sense. So if you is right, you's all right. If you's brown, stick around. But if you's black, get back. Almost 70 years ago, American blues singer Big Bill Broonzy sang of the racial hierarchy in place under America's Jim Crow system. Colorism, shadeism, #Team Lightskin, #Team Darkskin, divide and conquer, make one group believe they are better than the other, but always inferior to white. Perhaps one of the most harmful remnants of colonization and slavery was the internalization of these cancerous notions, which persist across continents and cultures to this day. To borrow the definition provided by Edward Ademolu, colorism, or shadeism, is an intraracial complexion-based hierarchy that often affords societal, cultural, economic privileges and favoritism towards or for lighter-skinned people, and discrimination against those with darker complexions. Some academics have even proposed that this may influence a person's life chances as much as race itself. And Finn.
Powerful, amazing writing, amazing introductions. Yeah, just so powerful. Thank you for sharing, Kristel.
Thank you for letting me share. I haven't looked at that one for a while, so it's nice to kind of, look back at one's work.
Did they ask you to write it, or you felt compelled to?
I felt compelled. So it's kind of, at that point I was kind of getting ideas and pitching them to editors, and I can't remember what prompted that one in particular, but I just felt that it was an issue, that I feel like colorism isn't necessarily something that I've heard a lot of light-skinned people talk about. It's often come from the perspective, particularly of dark-skinned women, which is right, and they should always be centered in that conversation. But as is the case for racism, anyone who's benefiting from a system should also be kind of, you have to be a part of that change. So in our kind of in Black communities, or any communities where colorism is prevalent, those of us who might be at the more favorable side of it, we must also call it out, challenge ourselves, challenge others. Otherwise it's not going to go any, it's not going to be dealt with if we pretend it doesn't exist. So yeah, I just kind of felt that I hadn't read anything or seen anything about that. So I wanted to do it. I wanted to write it myself.
Awesome.
Yes.
So glad you did. And it's so impactful to see it in print, because like you said, if it's not talked about, and if it's something that's always, maybe if it is talked about, it's only talked about, on smaller scales, in small groups, amongst friends, or, amongst small community. It's like, it's one of those kind of hidden ugly things that can kind of stay hidden and just bubble underneath the surface. And I know definitely with, when I grew up, I definitely was aware of colorism. I didn't know of it as the term colorism, but it was definitely very present in my teenage years, those formative years. But no one talked about it, not really openly like that, and definitely not in a written article for all to see and for us to sit down and talk about now. So
like a lot of issues, I think for a lot of us, we just didn't have the vocabulary for it, right? Before we knew, as you said, we knew, we felt it, it's existed, but it's like how you articulate that. So at least things have come, or, they've come a long way in that the conversations are being had, but there's further to go, which is why it's so awesome to be here today and able to talk with you guys, about it, and to hear everyone's experiences. And now we have that vocabulary in our arsenal to do so.
I feel like there was vocabulary around it, except that it was just really specific and limiting. Like, people would refer to like a girl having like good hair, or having like like caramel skin or whatever, like these things. That was just what everyone would say. Oh, she's got good hair. She's got. I remember once I got my hair blown out, and someone was like, "Oh, she's got tall hair," and I was like, "Okay," but and everyone was surprised. Oh, how's her hair so long? Oh, I was like, "Is it not supposed to be?"
Yeah.
But then it was like this idea of like good hair being like, straighter, or if it was curly, like them like, stuffed curls, like Tamara style curls or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was it. And no one questioned it for a long time. It was just like, this is better. This is worse. Nappy hair is worse.
Yeah.
That's it. It's all been about without us knowing it. Again, this is a term that we have now, this whole thing around proximity to whiteness, but as in whiteness being the goal. So as you say, it was all about like, and we definitely, kind of drank the Kool-Aid, in that, a lot of us have internalized, a lot of those notions, as you say, of good hair and bright skin. In Jamaica, they say your skin's bright, stuff like that. Just all of these things that, we're unlearning now. That's what we're doing. We're unpicking that and untangling it.
And I also wonder, like, for the next generation, what will they be unlearning that we have already unlearned? I was looking back at, the Nina Simone song For Women, and like talking about the language that is used then that was actually really progressive. And then if we look back at that language now, it's like, actually, you know, there's still so many layers of how the kind of patriarchy, the white majority kind of impacts your language. And that, again, now who knows what we might still be doing, but it's a beautiful process, I think, of realizing and waking up. And certainly this, like, if we look back to when we were growing up versus now, it's changed, it's changing, it's continuing.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, I was in preparation for this, I was thinking about language and the kind of language we used to use, and, you know, how much attention do we pay to our language now? You know, how much are we just used to using, how much is habitual and kind of ingrained in the way we speak or what we read, and how much do we need to pay attention to it and awareness, and kind of continue to challenge ourselves in the choice of words that we use to describe ourselves and to describe others. And when I read this article, which I'll link in the show notes, and I believe it was written by someone who's appeared and worked with Halo before, who I will also link in the show notes, who do a lot of work around representation for mixed people. And she spoke about, you know, this term white passing and how that puts the onus on the person who someone is assuming is white. Whereas she said, you know, really, she feels that the term should be assumed white, because the onus is on the person who's viewing that person.
That's it.
Not on the person who's trying to pass inverted commas as white or something like that. So, you know, even just things like that, I'd not really thought about that term. I just accepted it as the term, and it's synonymous with this, and this is what we all understand it to mean. But actually, I think it's really important to interrogate our language. Absolutely. If we're going to continue to try and unlearn.
Yeah. And as someone who is white assumed often, I would say, like, it's not something I want. You know what I mean? I'm really proud of my heritage, and it's such an important part of who I am. And that I found that often it's easy for me to state who I am early in a conversation if I'm in a space that's an all white space, because I know the kind of the dangers that are there for me in not declaring that, and what things might be revealed that I'm really not comfortable with, you know. So I really like white assumed, because whilst I often am white assumed and I have very light skin and, you know, my hair is really fine, actually, that doesn't define all of me and my life experiences. And so therefore that's really important to me, that I'm not white. I'm mixed heritage, you know, and that's an important part of my being.
Yeah, and it's also really important to take the like historical context into account when we're talking about that term. Like, it's really not appropriate to use the term white passing if you think about it. Like, that term literally came from, like, you know, the US context, where they were literally for, you know, in order to have a chance of leading a normal life free of, you know, prejudice, people kind of understandably, if they were able to, so, you know, pass in white society, would literally do that. But that would be a huge cost. Like, they would literally have to completely disconnect from their families, their homes, everything, and start an entirely new life somewhere else where they can live this lie because of the prejudice. And, you know, so that was a phrase that came together at that time for that context, not today. Does that make sense? So as you say, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yes, hugely.
100%. Sorry, I just finished this book called The Vanishing Half. Have you guys read it?
Oh, it's so good.
And it's exactly this. It's exactly this, without giving too much away for Ella or anyone else who wants to read it. It's by Britt Bennett. And it follows these twins who grow up in this town where everybody is mixed, and they stay in the town because they just believe that staying fair and staying light skinned is the correct way. And they want, you know, the clearer eyes, and so nobody really leaves. And then these twin girls run away, and one returns, and they just wonder what happened to the other one. And it goes through time, but it starts way back, and it really looks at this idea of white passing, because literally, like, that's the way that, you know, this one twin decides to like navigate the world by passing, literally like staying quiet and hoping no one guesses. And
wow.
And so it, you know, in this sense, it focuses on her perspective, but the idea of white assumed is like, obviously it's more progressive, but it, you know, it forces you to really think about, why do we think that way, and why is it important? And and like, will me, the viewer of this person, change my behavior because of the appearance? And then, like, there are other characters in the story too that challenge that and make you think about that as well. But it was really, it was a really interesting book to read, especially.
I can't wait to read it.
As I was just talking to my husband about my daughters. So I'm like dark skin, like darkest skinned black woman. And my husband's white, and our children, one of them, I feel like she is really fair, and her hair is quite fine, and her eyes, we're still not quite sure what color they are. But I was, you know, we were saying, like, I wonder if when she grows up and she marries, if she like has a baby with somebody who is white or is also very like fair skinned, their child might come out, like, might look really fair or white. And why do I have feelings about that? Like, I definitely feel like I have feelings already with her when I'm with her, and people are like, huh.
Do you feel like it kind of erases you within her?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, people are even like...
And maybe her life experience as well, and how she might perceive the world.
How she'll perceive the world, how I can relate to her, how we can... her grandmother, my husband's mother, said to me once that she was worried that because we had spent so much time with my family, that my daughters might choose their black side.
Oh
God.
My God. Oh my God.
And feel closer to that, and not feel identified or close with her. And she's saying that from a place of love. She loves these girls. I have this opposite feeling for some reason. And why does it matter, really? These are two babies.
Yeah, you don't want them to like forget basically any part of themselves, right?
I mean, we found we just try to present as much culture of our cultures to the children as possible. So, you know, my husband's Jewish, so we'll, like, you know, we celebrate the high holidays, and we present that. Like, during Hanukkah, they light the candles and everything. And also I'm making like ackee and saltfish for like brunches some days, and we talk about what it means to be Jamaican. My family's Jamaican, so that's like an important thing. When we were with my nephews, they would all, the three of them would sit around and be like, "We're Jamaican."
I love this.
And my sister like,
Beautiful.
so we want that to be like a clear thing, that you're not just one or the other, that you're everything.
Yeah.
But it's hard when you and yourself are like, what can I bring to the table? Am I going to get erased here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking to my mum about this yesterday, that she's still got a lot of pain, and like, how do you bring up a child when you're also in the pain? And like, my mum's specific story is really around lost identity, of not knowing her heritage and not knowing, you know, many parts of who she believes she is. So how do you bring up a child to be really comfortable with who they are and their mixedness when you're actually not quite sure of your own identity? And I think there's just so many layers in terms of the stories that we're sharing that kind of link back to this.
So exactly linked to what you were saying around identity. And I think the most important thing as a mixed person, but also as kind of anyone, is to, you know, try and have a really as much as you can as a parent, try and instill in your children a really strong sense of self. Because the fact is, like, the world is always going to define you on their own terms. They're going to try and, you know, especially as a mixed person, the way you're perceived depends on the room you're in a lot of the time. So it's that whole thing of like, all you can do is try and give them the tools to have as good a sense of themselves and their identity and background as possible. It's interesting because my daughter is I've gone through an interesting journey, I guess, now as a parent. I'm mixed race, but my baby daddy, my partner is is half Italian, half Moroccan. And my daughter, I remember having the same thoughts that Karla was talking about, like, what if my child doesn't, like, you can't see her Black heritage? How can I relate? Like, would that affect how I relate to her, how she can relate to me? But actually she's come out looking like the double of me. And then I've got a whole other layer of like, oh gosh, like what if she has to come up against more stuff than I kind of wanted her to? And that sounds awful and deep. Like, then it kind of gets really deep when I'm like, oh gosh, like these are things that you worry about, and kind of navigating the world as somebody kind of visibly of Black heritage. Like, your experience is going to be a certain way. So yeah, it's weird. It's weird. It's like that urge to want to protect her from the world ills, but also prepare her is, yeah, it's a mind F, to be honest. I'm not sure if we can swear on here, so I'm gonna use my P's and Q's. Okay.
An F, an S.
I discovered Sarah Lotus of the Mixed Bloom Room. I don't know if you're familiar with Sarah Lotus, who basically does this kind of 10-week coaching course for people of mixed heritage to just dive into all the questions as a community. So I've just started that program. And yeah, I'm really excited about the journey of asking those questions that maybe I didn't feel quite comfortable to ask my mum, because I could also see that there was that pain there. And, you know, navigating the world, like you said, people are so quick to put you in a box that it's not always easy to just share these all these thoughts and all these questions in that space. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I feel like growing up, it was sort of almost acceptable to mock people who were like super dark skin and people who were super light skin, about being like, you know, whatever stereotypes people have about those people, like they were sort of like acceptable because it came from a place of like, if you were like not like really dark but not really light, then you were in this place where you still were like kind of rejected. Like I mentioned, well, Emma, you were there. The time like someone came up to me in Oxford Street, these guys were doing this some sort of interview thing. I don't know. It was that time in culture where people were like interviewing people on the street and like, you know, street interviews and like all of that stuff. So these like two guys just like walking around like regular, like, yeah, can I chat to you for a second? Yeah. What is your like opinion like about being like dark skinned girls? Yeah. And I was like, who are you talking to? And I remember that was like the first time maybe I had been referred to as dark skin, and it took me a second, and I was like, but then I'm standing next to Amma, who's like one of the most beautiful people I've ever met in my life, like in real life. And I'm like, well, why am I feeling some kind of way when they're literally putting me in the same box as this like goddess right here? But I did, and it was because of like growing up with this ridiculous notion of, you know, you can get tan but don't get too dark, and like don't marry too dark of a man because you don't want your kid's hair to be difficult. What? Like, why are you relaxing 7-year-old girl's hair, which is what happened to me. I grew up with relaxed hair, did not know what my texture was. Do you know what I mean?
Me too. At 7, they put well, my dad took me to someone to put relax on my hair. Weird, but anyway, it's another story.
I remember being in Jamaica and getting my hair relaxed and seeing a friend from school there getting weave put in. Weave. Her name was Donna. Hi, Donna, if you're out there. And it was like, that was right. That's how you were supposed to look. You're supposed to be kind of fair, but not too fair.
Yeah.
And have this like straight or wavy hair that's easy to comb. Why is that so important?
Yeah.
Finger detangling is fine, thank you.
Just understanding that different hair needs different methods, different products. It's not one is more
Yeah.
difficult than
And
the other. It's just
that like moment was like a bomb exploded inside of me. And I had to kind of like deal with the fallout. I'm not a bomb. It was just like the blinkers were lifted off, I guess. And I realized like, oh, I'm, you know, I did drink the Kool-Aid and I've been drinking for years. And, but now it's time to sort of like deal with what that is about so that I can actually be happy with myself.
It's so eye-opening for me to hear that, because in that moment I didn't know that you had that moment happening for you, you know. And also, actually, interestingly, I mean, obviously it depends on who the viewer is, right, or who's asking the question, because from my perspective I wouldn't describe you as dark-skinned, but that's I'm a different viewer, right? So it's like, and obviously that all comes with the context of what my references are for someone who's dark-skinned, someone who's really, really, really fair-skinned, someone who's really, really dark-skinned, someone who's somewhere in the middle, and this whole spectrum. I remember this, just thinking about growing up in terms, and also significant moments of unlearning around colorism. I remember hanging out. There was a big group of us who used to hang out and go out together, and we were all, I would probably say, all shades of brown. And I remember there were two girls in the group who had the same name, and one of them was much, much darker than the other. One I would describe as dark-skinned, and the other one was much lighter, but had shorter hair. And the dark-skinned one had much longer hair, like past shoulder length, and it was relaxed. And there was this weird, you know, now I'm older and I'm looking back with hindsight, there was this weird unspoken kind of acceptance and strange, like, understanding that even though she was really dark skinned, because she had really long hair that was unexpected by everyone, it made her like acceptable. It made her like this pass for being beautiful. Like, oh, okay, well, she's really dark skinned. Oh, but her hair's really long and really thick, so she, you know, she's all right. It's kind of like, oh, she gets a pass, you know. And guys would be like, oh yeah, but her hair's really long. And then the other girl who had the same name as her, who had shorter hair and was lighter, it was kind of like, okay, you two kind of balance out, because even though your hair's not as nice as hers, you're lighter.
The checklist.
So, you know, you look more beautiful. It just,
oh my God.
yeah, it was just,
it's a hierarchy, man. It's not straightforward. Like, it's not, because then you bring not only colorism, it's like texturism, as you say, about hair.
yes.
And like those really annoying conversations. I know some of my black girlfriends who have got, you know, I guess, as you say, that they're probably of like Caribbean heritage. They might have mixed in them. They identify as black, and the first thing a lot of guys will be like, "What are you mixed with? What are you mixed with?" And they're like, "I'm black. Like, I don't need, like, it's okay to just be black and attractive. Like, you don't need to try and find some exotic link.
I need to understand why I'm attracted to you."
Like, exactly, like, I'm hot because I'm black, like, not because of some, like, this, you know, distant relative. Thank you very much. So yeah, it's that kind of thing, and it's terrible, isn't it?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What are you mixed with? I used to get that when I had relaxed hair. And I would search for things. Well, I think I have, you know, this in my somewhere. Actually, my dad is mixed somewhere, and I don't know where, because I didn't grow up with him really. But one time he dropped a bunch of pictures at my door, and one of them showed like a grandmother, a great grandmother, someone, and she was white. And I'm like, who is this lady? And I have no context for her. I don't know where she's from. I suspect Germany. I used to think Portugal. Now I don't think so anymore. So, and I told my sister that, and my sister put like, she started referring to herself as mixed.
It's so sad.
I was like,
guys,
all right, do your thing, babe.
White supremacy.
Yeah, really.
Look how we've. Oh no.
How far back does that go, Bubble? Do you know? As in the white woman in the picture. Do you know how many generations back?
I don't know. I want to say she was probably my dad's either grandmother Yeah, probably grandmother. Just judging on the type of photo and the quality and stuff. I remember having a lot of colorism debates, like probably the most open and frequent I ever had when I was in India, because it's so huge. The colorism it's like disgusting. All of the billboard posters, the only type of women you saw in there were fair skin. Fair and Lovely was sold everywhere, that horrible bleach. And we talked about it. Like, I worked with a lot of different, I was there for 3 months doing projects with different populations, but that was the one thing that the fairer kids were favored, obviously and clearly. The lighter skinned girls were praised. It was like, but I just remember being like, well, this isn't just a Black African thing. This is white supremacy.
Yeah. Is the fallout of colonization, 100%. And I mean, that's just everywhere, isn't it? Same in Thailand. I remember being in Thailand and seeing advertising for relaxer cream, for Thai women to straighten their hair, bleaching products, babies bleaching products, baby cream with bleach, like just madness. So I was just like, that's the first time I didn't even realize it was present in Deja. You know, I had that was in 2007 or 2006, and I remember being shocked. I was like, wow, it's everywhere. And how do we do our bit to make sure we don't pass this on to the next generation?
It's I think the fact is that the fact that we're talking about it is already an improvement on what a lot of us grew up with, right? The fact that we're conscious of it, and you know, I think about the books and stuff and shows that my little girl gets to watch, and I would have loved that when I was young. Like, I'm so excited that there's, you know, there's improvements making that. For example, a lot of you know, children's literature featuring Black characters aren't actually written by Black authors, stuff like that. So, but the point is, she can see herself. They can see themselves reflected and normalized, and not just themselves, but others that look different across, you know, across multiple factors. So
instead of this like one homogenized look that is like the marker.
I thought it was like the best thing when I was a kid, that you should, you know, to be blonde and blue-eyed. You know,
come on, we all did that. Who did not do the nightie on their head, running around
Amara
their house?
started doing that.
No.
Or she'll wear like one of Malia's like muslin cloths on her hair and be like, I've got pink hair.
Oh, bless.
At least it's pink. I quite like that she's rocking pink.
I remember when I was a little one, I don't know if you remember an old VO5 advert where a girl would have a curl that falls on her forehead and she'd blow up and it would move. And I remember with my Afro puff, like trying to like pull a bit down and like, why won't it move?
Oh my God, that was the bane of my life. Having hair that did this and it moved when you did that. I was like,
why won't it move?
I wanted to flow.
And it's because we didn't see ourselves represented, right? We didn't see that this hair is also beautiful. The hair doesn't only move in this way, and hair, you know, hair that moves like this or stays still or grows outwardly or has this curl pattern. That's also beautiful. But if you don't see it, you don't know that
you can be it. I try and wear my hair out in an afro as much as possible, given like split ends, and have Amara do the same, because when we're together, like from the back, and she loves that, and I love that she wants to look, so I'll like dress up and like try and like put the best face on it. She associates this hair with being proud and being like, you know, beautiful and not just wish for this other thing. Know that she can like you know, it's work in progress, isn't it?
Absolutely,
it is. I'm working on ourselves. Working on ourselves. Like for me, I had did a bit of therapy, stuff like that, and as I say, it's an ongoing process. There's no pinnacle of wokeness or whatever, apex. It's ongoing, and we and so that's a big part of it, and really challenge. And it's every day I have to challenge myself. Every day I have to like be like, don't say that. Why are you inclined to want to say something or feel a certain way about something? And it's like looking inward and just trying not to pass on that multi-generational trauma, you know. That's the thing. It's like it ends here. It ends now.
The narrative ends here.
Exactly. So that's
you guys.
I'm sorry, but that was the best podcast we've ever done. That was just so beautiful.
Thank you for listening. You can connect to us and our guests via the links in each episode's show notes. Before you go, we invite you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the goodness to come. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps tell a friend to tell a friend. We are always grateful for you, our listeners, for our fabulous guests, and to everyone who has contributed to and been a part of our journey here.
Our music is by Tomo Carter. Everything else is brought to you by us, the PowerUp Power Team.
I'm Mesma.
I am AmaRouge. And we are PowerUp Podcast.